All right.
Ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Abita Springs. I'm sitting here doing it myself. Town of Abita Springs Public Committee meeting agenda for Tuesday, August 4th, 2020. Before we get started, if I could ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. And we'll call us to order, beginning with the Pledge of Allegiance by Alderman Contoy. Thank you, Regan. Okay, let's start off with the mayor's announcement. Mr. Curtis?
Okay. Can y'all? Yeah, there you go. Okay. Mayor's announcements. We have the Busker and Labor Day events that we may or may not have. We are looking. We have 4 unplugged, and we have the fireworks left over from 4th of July that we may try and do Labor Day. If it looks like that's not going to happen, then Brian Gallen has come up with an idea, kind of like a drive-in busker festival out in the field across from the town hall, where the way it's set up is that half of the field will be the cars will be parked closer to the right, and they'd have like a 4-foot area on the side of their car that they can get out in, but nowhere else. And then on the other side, it would be the other way. And so keep everybody out of the middle, and they'd have to stay by their car. So we may do that. If we can't do the Labor Day, we may include 4 unplugged if we can get them for that, and maybe the fireworks blow from behind the town hall. That, you know, just something to try and bring back some normalcy, if we can. All the particulars have not been worked out yet, other than the discussion of the importance of social distancing and all that. So we're working on that as well. More to come. Yes. Right. Yeah. Okay, so there you go. And Plein Air was canceled until next year. Yeah.
All righty, thank you. Okay, first let's get rolling with the Finance Committee.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to open the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
And I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from July.
I'll second that as well.
And then I'd like to bring Jay Hawkins up to go over the finer points of the June financial report.
I sent everybody 2 files. One included the cash flow for each of the funds plus the summary of the major funds, the general fund, utility fund, shared sales tax, and public works. And then I also sent a comparison of the January through June for 2019 and 2020. And I highlighted some of the more important areas where there were some major deviations or just some things that you need to look at and maybe ask a question as to why. But in general, the town is doing as I would have expected for this year so far. As most of you who know me know that I'm not just looking at the current January through June cycle. I'm looking at the whole year. I'm looking at next year. I'm looking at 2 years. I'm looking at 5 years, and in some cases even 10 years down the road. And so, as I put in my email, what I intend to start doing is separating out the capital expenditure items and the bond issue expenditures from the normal operating budget, so that by next year we will have a apples to apples comparison. Once we start with January, we'll be able to see in January what was just straight operating, and then in a separate document, separate spreadsheet, there will be a capital expenditure items. So that's what I'm planning for the remainder of this year, to get that in place so by January 2021. But right now, as far as the January to June 2020, if you have that comparison sheet with you, there are some items where there's some major deficits in January 2020 versus 2019. And a lot of that is because sometimes the revenue will come in June, sometimes the revenue might come in July or August. So it depends on whatever month it comes in as to when it's recorded. So right now, if there are major discrepancies in some of these revenue accounts, I wouldn't worry about it. Because I think July and August we'll recapture some of those dollars and be able, and so we'll be right on track with what the budget is, what we think the budget will do. But we also had some one-time income. We had some proceeds from an insurance claim, and we had some FEMA
Excuse
income.
me, Jay. What was the insurance claim for the 48,000? Page 1.
Yeah, the insurance claim, that was from the roof,
Okay.
the wind damage from the roof. 3 roofs.
All right, and the FEMA income of 91,000? Danny?
And
Oh, yeah,
That was
okay.
Katrina, finally cleared.
That, that was the money that was being held until we could prove that we did everything that we
Perfect.
needed to do, and
Okay, thank you.
okay. You can see water, on the second page, you can see water and sewer sales are keeping up with last year. And actually, the projected net income for the whole utility fund should be enough to cover the projected debt service on the loan and on the other 2 bond issues that we have
For the sewer issue.
for the sewer. Now, that may change between now and December depending on our expenditures for sewer improvements. So we'll just keep an eye on that, but right now we're fine. And actually, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 set aside for debt service payments on the loans. So that money has been, it's been in the process, it's been collected since 2017 when the water and sewer rates were increased.
Okay, and then obviously we had a mild winter, therefore gas sales are down versus 2019.
What's that?
Gas sales are down as well for
Gas sales,
2020.
yes. It's a combination of mild winter and actually lower gas rates that the town was able to take Well, the revenue is down because of mild weather. That's the long and the short of it.
Correct.
The cost of buying the gas is also down because the town bought at good prices. And so the combination of the two has given us some extra surplus. But next year can be just the opposite. You just never know with natural gas. You just have to plan the best way you can and hope that it comes out all right.
Historically, the prior administration was more favorable that the sales were going to be higher for natural gas. So I think as a body, we probably need to look at considering not forecasting as much in gas sales because it's so unpredictable.
Yeah, it was unpredictable, and I'm those that know me know that I'd like to prognosticate on the conservative side
Exactly.
as much as possible. But I also like to be realistic. If I know something's going to happen, then I'll plug it in there.
Well, if you can predict the weather in January in Abita Springs, let's take the chance on lottery tonight.
No, ain't going to happen. We've had as much as $250,000 difference
Exactly.
in gas sales in some years. So it's really gambling when you're looking at that.
We are also getting ready to start a rate study with the LMG, LMGA, yeah, the Louisiana Municipal Gas Authority, is going to do a rate study. They came and met with us, and we're getting all the data gathered. He felt like his opinion was we were a little low in what we were charging. We'll find out, have a better idea from them as far as, where we should be. So we're doing that as well.
As far as the rest of the funds, let me touch on our law enforcement expenditures. We have pretty much covered the law enforcement expenses so far this year. Even with expending money for a vehicle and the lights and sirens and everything else that goes along with it, plus all the communications gear that goes along with that. There was a total expenditure of about $67,000 just for those two items. And with our sales tax revenue and with our fines and fees revenue, we've pretty much been able to cover everything so far.
Well, it was a great decision, and congrats again to Danny for making that decision. The public is very pleased with it, and the feedback that I'm getting from the citizens throughout the town of Abita Springs is very positive, especially regarding Ricky and his responsiveness and his attentiveness to things. So, great thing, and I think they really appreciate having someone that lives in Abita represent Abita from that standpoint.
We are still, though, we're still waiting on NCIC to be approved and us be able to get that online, as well as still the radios. We're working through that with the sheriff as well. So.
Hopefully that will get resolved. It's extremely unfortunate because obviously before the radios, Ricky was putting his own life at risk.
Exactly.
Not being able to call for backup, being in a situation where literally the push of a button could have saved his life if he would have been in any type of distress. So hopefully that'll be resolved and we'll have access to NCIC.
There's a couple of items. There's one item, the structure repair and maintenance on the town hall. We've spent approximately almost $80,000, of which $47,000 was for the roofs, and there was some HVAC and other expenditures. That money comes out of the town hall renovation part of the limited tax refunding bond.
But the $80,000 of the structural repair and maintenance also, we received $48,000 from insurance, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
See, and my plan is to move a lot of that stuff off of the operating budget so that we can see what it costs just to operate, excluding capital expenditures and excluding the bond issues, so that in the case of utility fund, if we know what it costs us to operate and we know what our revenue is, then we can determine whether we're not collecting enough, whether we need a rate increase, and then if we are collecting enough, then we can start replacing some of the water lines and some of the other infrastructure things that need to be done. But we need to know those numbers first before we start spending.
So Jay, if we do that, should we maybe do a percentage for maintenance or capital outlay or something? Start tracking what we normally would spend in a year separately, but also trying to make it part of our budget to set aside a percentage for that kind of thing.
Right, that will be part of my calculation.
Yeah.
And I'll be needing to talk with everyone to make sure that my calculations are in the ballpark
Right.
for maintenance. But I do have the last 5 or 6 years of financial statements for that to go by. So I've got a lot of data that I can use from prior years in order to come up with those amounts. But once we get the sewer lines all fixed, there should be lower maintenance costs for sewer. Once
Certainly
we
for
get
sewer.
water lines changed out.
And
there's-
water meters installed.
And water meters installed. Now, that's another point. Water meters only last 10 to 15 years. And right now, they're costing us, what, $202 a piece? Well, in 10 or 12 years, who knows what they're going to cost? Probably in the neighborhood of $270 to $300. Well, that's an expense when you have in the neighborhood of, or maybe by that time, at least 1,500 homes that we've got to replace water meters. So that's an additional cost that we have to start planning for once these meters get installed.
Sure, and there are other things that have just been delayed for years, which I'm not going to enumerate on, but, you know, we know that there are things that we've been wanting to catch up on, and we're taking 2 big bites this year, or in the next couple of years, but it would be great to have a larger percentage bracketed for the future, because as you say, maintenance costs increase, but we're also behind on some other issues that we're not even dealing with at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, and you're right, Regan, not only are we behind on other issues, but then we need to start depreciating things and putting things aside to replace not only water meters, but vehicles for the town marshal.
Right, it's
Building,
basic
yeah.
planning, but
Well,
put it
right,
in a
right
financial
now,
goal.
in the utility fund, there's about $102,000 that is expensed as depreciation.
Perfect.
Now, that money needs to be pigeonholed for replacing items in the future. And we need to establish a depreciation fund for the general fund as well, because there's this building and the annex building needs improvements
Correct.
periodically. So you need to have these things depreciated, have the expense pulled out, set aside, so that you've got the money to take care of these things when it happens. But that's all part of the planning and trying to calculate when some of these improvements or replacements need to happen.
And Jay, having to deal with the water sales on page 2, if you can see, in the first half of the year, since we've been putting in the new meters, we're actually getting a much more accurate read on the amount of water that's being used. So our increase from 2019, I would venture to say, was probably from the new meters that are giving us the more accurate reading of use. So as we get more in, and I guess we're probably, I don't know how many, but we're a few-
Over 50%?
No, I would say probably 45%.
So if we're seeing this percentage and we're less than 45%, that's nice.
Right.
Goes to show that it should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. I think that was, oh, the other part that I wanted to mention was the computer and networking expenses. That's all, some of those items are going to need to be capitalized so that they're depreciated as well, because they'll need to be replaced or upgraded at some point in the future. But there's been an expenditure of some $70,000 so far. Some of that comes out of the general fund, some I guess is the park and rec because of the trailhead.
Right.
So we'll need to break down that cost and assign it to those different departments, those different funds.
Right. And we're looking in, and we haven't made any decision or anything yet, but we're looking into portable workstations rather than computers where we buy them, we lease them, and so we don't end up like the upstairs over the annex with, 125 computers and printers and fax machines and all that that's just thrown up in the corner.
They're totally antiquated.
Right, that aren't any good. So now we,
Send them to auction.
right, well, we Leanne will tell you, we wrapped a whole pallet up and got $5 for it from, wasn't it John Preble? Yeah, John Preble gave us $5 on a bid.
All right, well,
It cost us $1,200 to do the advertising and all that, we got $5 back.
a lot of the other government agencies are sending their stuff to Slidell for the auction, and
Right.
it's just one huge batch.
Yeah. Yeah,
So we
this-
definitely need to look at it.
This is some old nasty stuff.
It doesn't matter. They'll take, just take the hard drives out.
Right.
Jay, two questions I have, and one of them, is my pet peeve. Where are we with our emergency budget? If we have another Katrina or a COVID-19 that shuts us down completely, can we operate for 6 months with what we have in the bank? And then the other one is, what has been the sales tax related to COVID-19?
Yeah, I've been tracking the amount of dollars that we have that's unrestricted, that can be used for any purpose that the mayor and the council deems. And right now in the general fund, we have a little over $500,000 is unrestricted, and that's a little bit. It's about $40,000 more than what it was at the beginning of the year. Now,
Mayor, how much is $500,000 going to get you? How long can you run the city on $500,000 for the town? Ballpark. 4 months? 3 months? Okay.
yeah, I can tell you.
Well, if we can maybe shoot by year's end, if we can, try to work towards at least having 6 months of backup. We don't know where we're going to be in the fall with this pandemic. We could be back in phase 1, and sales tax could go down substantially. Another Katrina or something, we need to be able to operate at least for 6 months.
Just looking at the general fund, we're probably spending about $150,000 a month on average.
All right, so 3 months.
So we'd have a little over 3 months of expense or of revenue available. Now, the goal, of course, is to increase that,
Exactly.
but we also have things that we needed to buy, like the Marshall vehicle and the communication equipment and the computer networking equipment. So that's all money that, if we didn't spend it, would have been there.
Yeah,
But
but those
it's
were-
obviously things that are needed.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the necessities.
Yeah. So it's a choice that mayor has to make within the budget. And that's why you elect him, to make those decisions.
Thank you, Jay.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
No,
Jay,
thank
do you
you.
want to just talk to the sales tax, where we are right now, and what we project that to be maybe by end of summer? Would you-
Well, actually, sales tax has been holding pretty steady, which surprised me a little bit. I thought we'd probably be down a little bit, but no, we're right there. And unless something unforeseen happens, I think we're going to come in. Actually, I think Public Works is probably going to be ahead of the game. Shared sales tax might be down a little bit. But the good news there is our expenses in that fund are down right now. Primarily because we're waiting to improve some of the roads after the sewer lines get fixed. You don't want to be fixing sewer lines and then do the road and then fix the sewer lines and then have to come back and tear up the roads again.
Right.
So you've got to get them in the right order. And so right now in the shared sales tax, I think we're probably going to end the year at about $150,000 surplus. But that can be added to the money from the bond issue to help improve the roads and also the drainage, which is an increasingly more problematic thing that's going on right now. So,
So that's shared sales tax, but the local sales tax is doing better than 2019?
local is doing better than 2019.
So keep buying local, people.
Jay, just circle back, because I know you touched this in the beginning about the timing of payment for the insurance license fees and the occupational license fees. Generally, is it the occupational, like for example, occupational license fees, are they paid in the? Okay.
Yeah, although it seems like historically, it's been June, July, and August when we've received the bulk of the money for those things.
Well, for insurance licensing, yes, but that's the reason. But for occupation license, we do get new businesses that come in, so we get people, are delinquent. They wait too long for their renewal, so a lot of times it'll be after March 1st.
Yeah, it looks like January, February, and March has been the bulk of it, but it seems like some keeps dribbling in all year long. So
let's say, for example, through June of this year, compared to last year, we're down about $7,300. I mean, is that pretty much everybody delinquent? Or is that also, what other factors there?
There'll be less businesses.
I mean, that's a lot of less businesses.
it could be people going out of business too, that aren't renewing their licenses. But I don't know what the July figures showed for that. I don't know if you have any ideas, Stacy? No? Okay.
Okay, I was just curious on timing. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thanks, Jay.
No, Jay, thank you as always. Appreciate all your hard work and dedication.
If there's no other comments, I'd like to make a motion to close the Finance Committee.
Okay, I will second that.
Like to-
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to open governmental.
I'll second that.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the July minutes for governmental.
I'll second that as well.
We have two topics under discussion tonight. Discussion of the Historic Commission recommendations related to the size of porches and fencing, setbacks, and height. And number two, discussion of the Historic Commission recommendations relative to the establishment of certificate of appropriateness application fee. Mayor Curtis, would you like to start off with number one, the discussion of the Historic Commission recommendations related to the size of porches and fencing, setbacks, and height? Or who is going to be presenting that?
Well, I think that's where Mr. Mark Fancy is going to come in and kind of do his thing.
Okay. Nice to meet you. As the mayor mentioned, my name is Mark Fancy. Since I'm over here by myself, I'm going to take the mask off. I'm a retired city planner from Oregon, and I retired here to Abita Springs, so I've been helping out part-time with some planning issues. And tonight I'm conveying to you some proposed amendments to the Abita Springs Design Review Guidelines forwarded from the Historic Commission. Those amendments are related to the amendments are related to both porches and fences on corner lots. I'm going to cut to the amendments here for just a second. Okay, so the amendments are to section, under Chapter 5 and new construction, to make the minimum depth for a front porch for new construction going from 7 feet to 8 feet. I think it was the Historic Commission's feeling that there was some economies there by not having to trim 8-foot-long boards. It also, with an 8-foot deep porch, it affords some more opportunity for having chairs and tables and such out on the porch. So that was the amendment related to porches. For fences, what we're working with here are corner lots. So the goal is to reduce the height on the street side of corner lots. That is, a corner lot would have a front yard along one street and a side yard along another street. And along that side yard, the proposed amendments would reduce the fencing height for a privacy fence down to 4 feet. Currently, with a required setback, they can be 6 feet tall, extending as high as 8 feet tall with 2 feet of lattice work on top. I'm sorry, 7 feet or 8 feet are the two standards.
7 to 8.
No, total.
7, yeah, 7 or 8. So 8 feet with lattice. Yeah, yeah. The other amendment regarding that is that when you've got a corner lot with a privacy fence in the rear yard and that yard comes out and abuts a street, that there would be, again, a 4-foot high fence maximum for a setback of 30 feet back from the street. And let me go to these photos here to kind of illustrate. These are some fences that were recently constructed in town. So here's a side yard fence along St. Mary that is currently about 7 feet tall. With the proposed amendments, the height would be reduced to 4 feet tall along the entire street side. And then back here, where Mayor Curtis is standing, so here's where the side yard, the street side, meets the rear yard. And here you've got a rear yard fence that, first of all, oh man. There we go. It's too tall. It's about 10 feet tall. But here, the way the proposed amendments read, this height would be reduced down to 4 feet for a 30-foot deep setback area. The goal of these amendments is to kind of minimize, I believe, the visual impact of fences specifically along streets. So on the rest of this yard, say the other rear corner where it's interior and not along the street, they can have the 6-foot ranging up to 8-foot high fence. But for this setback area nearest to the street, the maximum fence height would be 4 feet under the proposed amendments.
Can I ask a point of clarification, so if you're in the middle of a block and you have a privacy fence running from the back of your property all the way to the street, the first 30 feet still has to be 4 feet high? Or is this only for corner lots?
This is only for corner lots.
Okay,
And I should mention, for all other side yards, like interior side yards, the setback is 1/3 of the depth of the building. So if you're in an interior lot, it could be 30 feet, it could be 50 feet, depending upon where your building is situated and what is 1/3 of that facade depth back.
house is set back 30 feet, and the lot's 150, then they would, a third of them, they take it off. The fence would start from 50.
Yeah, it depends on the depth of the building, so you go
Depth of the building or depth of the lot?
depth of the building, yeah. Right, that's for interior lots, right, right. So currently, if this fence, this side yard fence had been correctly constructed, it could have been 6 to 8 feet high once you get by that 1/3 of the building depth setback. And what this would do is reduce it down and say, no, it's gonna be 4 feet when it's along the street. Hope that's helpful.
For the entire expanse of the,
For the entire expanse along the street, right, right.
well, that doesn't offer you much privacy.
well, it's really a front yard, what they're,
Well, if I remember
necessarily.
correctly, this house fronts a street, and then a street goes alongside the side of it.
Right, and that's what
correct?
these amendments are specifically
Okay.
for these properties, right.
One of the issues that we have with this, especially with this specifically, and we have it in a lot of areas in town, is that you have 2 corner lots with 1 interior lot. So the house that's in between this house and the house that's on the other corner then has 2 back privacy fences the entire length of their yard that they are in between. So basically, it's a house in between 2 8-foot fences. So by doing the 30-foot setback, that interior lot then has 4 feet in the front and 8 feet towards the back. So it's different when you have 4 lots on a block. When there's only 3, that middle lot ends up with 2 8-foot fences if you leave it as it currently is.
Well, it also would depend on which way the houses on the corners face.
Correct.
Well, the houses, all of the houses
it
on
face-
our corner lots like this face the exterior streets.
So if they didn't face the exterior streets, then what are you gonna do with the center house? They're still gonna be able to have the 8-foot fence.
No, they'd have, right.
1/3 of their house, so therefore it would be the same as the neighbor's house. Okay.
yeah. So the general idea is everyone has a visible front yard instead of being a silo or, having walls.
Correct.
Right, so now they're being
Yeah.
shut out basically by the corner lots because there's no
Yeah.
restrictions.
Right.
I often field calls, just FYI, on people who are complaining about their neighbors who build tall fences all the way to the property line, and they don't mind them having privacy, but it becomes also a hazard for backing in and getting out of driveways on those interior lots. So, number one, I think it's a great idea because it makes us look more like the cottage, kind of atmosphere from aesthetics. But number two, it's also a safety concern. So I don't have any problem with the amendments. I think.
No,
they're a
I
good
don't either.
idea.
And I personally would not want to live confined between 2 8-foot fences.
Right.
All right, so let me run through this scenario. So let's say all the houses are facing one street, okay? And you've got a corner, and then you got an interior. Everybody's facing the same way. So the house in the center can have the 8-foot fence on both sides, 1/3 back, right, going all the way back to the property line, and even they can do 8 feet on the backside. So the 2 houses on the corners, 4 along the front, just like the interior, but on the sides, you've got to stay 4 feet all the way across, all the way down. Along the street.
Oh, no. I don't think so.
That's what I'm asking you. It's 4 feet on the street for the guys on the corner, for the folks on the corner.
In other words, in this picture here, if this was under the modified requirement, and this was actually either a 6 foot or a 7 foot or 8 foot, or proper 8 foot fence, not this height, it would be 4 foot fence or no fence along the street side here on a corner lot where the front of the lot is on this street, not on St. Mary where we're on. The front,
Well,
no, in this one, the front of this house is facing this way.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Oh, on here.
Ron, you should know we're high tech over here.
I had the same thing in my, yeah,
have a
look,
great day.
we need a clean sheet.
It's on the right. It's on the right by Ron. Oh, there's one on either side. You're right. Ron, are we generally saying that anything facing a street is going to be 4 feet high?
Yes.
Okay. For clarification.
All the houses are facing the same direction.
Flat.
So just like a
So-
corner lot has setbacks
This
that
side-
are
you got a-
on
you got a
both
side street
sides,
here and you have a side street
they have
here.
reduced fences on both sides.
Yes. Well, this side, or this side, either one. It's got to be 4 feet all the way down. That's the clarification.
Just open a new one. Oh, you were almost there. There, yay.
Okay. Okay, so let's say if we're,
Just draw like a town square.
a typical plot, a typical 300 by 300 foot block in Avita Springs has 2 key lots and 5 lots like this. Am I correct? And these are 60, 60, 60. These are 120. These are 60. So 120, 120, and 60 is 300. 5 60s is 300. This is standard. Okay. Now, if I build a house and I still have a 60-foot a lot that I'm allowed to build on, and I set that house back here. Right now, my fence would have to be, I could have a high privacy fence 1/3 the way back of the house. Let's say the house is 60 feet, then 1/3 would be 20 feet back. I can go to, let's call it the privacy fence, which is the tall fence. And then in the front, I could do a 4 foot. If I was on the corner and I had the same house, I'd still come back 1/3 with my high fence here, but now I come back 30 feet here. This is my high fence, and then this is a 4-foot fence. Now, it looks like a small backyard in this situation, but remember, the minimum lot size now is 90. So, in that situation, if I had built a house here, facing this way, and that's important, these all face this way. In this situation, I'd come back 1/3 with a high fence.
and then 30 feet back here, which would allow a 60-foot backyard here, and then this would be the fence here. What that helps is what you saw in the previous pictures, as we just mentioned, is if you had, 6-foot-high fences here and 6-foot fences high here, that this poor homeowner in the middle here is surrounded by fencing, but if you use the 30 feet here and 30 feet here, they at least have some sort of a front yard where they can see over the picket fences. Does that make sense?
It does, but I guess at some point, I mean, because we don't have the 5 lots, it's really going to be 3 home sites on each side of the block with 2 in the interior, correct? I mean, that's kind of what, with the 90,
It'd
with
be
the
a
90-foot lots?
90 and a 120, I guess, because you can't, 300 doesn't divide into 90.
Right.
All our
Well,
lots are.
And a lot of,
This
a
one?
lot of,
No, put it on the other side. Put it on the other side. Put it on your left side as you, 3 houses,
All right.
because this is, I mean, because that's what we're dealing with
So
in
let's say we
today's
split this,
layout.
we split this, and we have a lot here.
I was gonna say, a lot of corner lots end up being built on 2 lots, so,
So in that situation, you got the 1/3 and the 1/3, and then it's gonna come back 30 here, but it leaves 60. And this situation, and this one in the inside lot facing here, it's gonna be a 1/3 and a 1/3 and a full height fence back here, which it is now.
Okay. And I guess what I'm trying to picture in my head is you've got these 3 houses, and I'm speaking strictly on the left-hand side here, that you're just going to have these various heights of fences, you know what I'm saying, and where...
What we do now, so in this situation, you have a high fence here, you'd have a high fence here, a high fence here. All your high fences would be like this. This would be your privacy backyards, and this would be the low picket fence or no fence.
And I guess the question I have is, do people really, the high back fence, tying the back corner of the house, going to the rear property line, and do we see that, I mean, as a quote-unquote typical
Yeah.
fencing layout? To
People
where
are-
you're creating 2
people-
separate yards?
2 separate yards?
Well,
I mean, like a front yard and backyard, yeah, a lot of people do that.
That's typical.
you got a yard here, and then you have your yard here, so you have 2 different yards.
Well, in this situation, this would be the picket fence front yard, and in this one, this would be the high privacy fence.
No, you don't have to put your fence here.
No,
You don't want to, it's
but it would be 30 feet. So what we're trying to accomplish is we want to have a better streetscape. We don't want blocks to look like Southwind coming into town, where all you see is a fence, or Dog Pound Road, all you see are fences. The other thing which is not in this ordinance, which I would recommend we consider, is we're seeing a lot of fences going in now, most of them in Mayor's Court because they did it without a permit. A lot of fences where the ugly side of the fence is facing out. I think we should require the good side of the fence to face the street. You can always do a 2-sided fence if you want 2 good sides. But we've got a picket fence on 59 that just went in without a permit, and we're looking at the rear end of a picket fence. It just, you would think people would want to do that, but they're not.
Ryan, the other thing, it's their option for 6 foot, they can have 4 foot all the way around. 6 foot's the option. They could have 4 feet for where you did your
Yeah,
different colors, where your blue and your green up at the top left.
The low fences are a variety of designs
Right.
of pickets or other types of boards. That's the low fence. And the options for high fences are 7 feet solid, which is the more standard fence we see in town, or 6 feet plus a 2-foot lattice on top. This is the fence that you see right across from St. James. So it's 6 plus 2. I don't know where this came from because those fences don't seem to hold up well, but it does give another foot of height.
I guess up to 2 feet. 6 plus 2, and you could do it's 2 foot
So
on the lattice.
This is 8, and this is
Yeah.
6. This is 7.
Yeah. So
Giving you one more overall foot.
Right.
So those are our two fences. So this is the fence that would be backyards and things like of that nature. At one time, we talked about in our discussions with our public meetings was, well, why don't we just use the 1/3 rule instead of 30 feet? And the problem with that is, if a house is not built yet, you're not sure where that would be for the interior lot. So the 30 feet came out as an alternative. And that 30 feet, I think, could be 20 feet or 25 feet. We grabbed 30 feet because of the 90-foot lots. It's still giving you a big backyard. But the key is you really just don't want these high fences right on the streets. Okay?
Any other comments? Alderman? Alderwoman?
I think it's a good idea. I mean, basically, it speaks to the aesthetics of our town, being a walkable town. It helps those people on the interior lots not feel like they're blocked out and secondary to the people who own the corner lots. And, you know, it just addresses the streetscape as we like to see it. So, you know,
I
I'm
mean,
for it.
we're becoming a town of sidewalks. We are a town of porches. We have a requirement for 2/3 of the front of every new house to be a porch, and hopefully the 8 feet depth instead of the 7-foot depth. So we're becoming a walkable, more friendly type of town. Abita has a different character than the other towns here, except for the old historic homes in Covington and Mandeville and Madisonville. But all the new houses in Abita, it's porch, 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 and low fences. And I think that really
Right.
is sort of the flavor of our town and our history.
I agree.
Any other comments? Leanne? So I support it. This is something that we've just had for discussion. Do we need to move this forward favorably, or what do we need to do at this point?
What? You got the porch too.
Yeah.
I think the porches is just logical to use an
Yeah,
8-foot because
it's
it's
a
an
8-foot
8-foot
board.
board and it makes
8-foot
the porches, again, more outdoor rooms that are more livable. I don't see any detriment to,
We think the 7 feet
It's a
might have
practical-
come from 60-foot lots, when they were trying to maximize what you could do on a lot, and that 1 foot allowed you to have a bigger living room. Well, now with 90-foot lots, that doesn't really work, and you really are throwing away that, you can't buy 7-foot lumber.
yeah.
Correct.
You buy 8-foot lumber,
Right.
so,
It's green, it's Abita.
right.
I'm good with the
You'll
porches.
get some lead points for that.
Any comments from the audience regarding the porches? No, he's made his comment. He supports it.
No, I'm good with the porches. The side lots I've got, I want to do a little bit more. I want to go out and look at that particular property, and I just want to, I'm going to have my wife draw something up for me in AutoCAD so I can just kind of get a better look at exactly how corner lots are going to look, because if somebody wants to add a pool or some other, there's some other variables I'd like to look at before I make my final decision.
And we do allow lots of variation in these 4-foot fences. We've got a pool, Marie DeSong has a pool right on Main Street in, I think, Live Oak. And it's a metal mesh with posts. It's just, you can't even see it. It's just green vinyl, which we allow. So I think the thing to remember is we don't want more walls of fences like Southwind or Harrison Avenue.
Correct.
Dog pound. That's what we're trying to avoid.
Well, we'd have to treat these individually anyway.
All right, well, if we're going to treat them individually, porches?
Well, it's just.
Are we voting on this,
No,
or
no,
are we
no,
just
no.
moving
No,
them
no.
more?
Th-
Yeah.
This would just be moving it favorably to,
So the porch discussion, would like to move that forward favorably, please, Leanne? Y'all in agreement?
yes,
Yes.
I'll second that.
The fence setbacks, the 4-foot versus 6 versus 7 versus 8 with lattice. Pat?
Yeah, so I would say, look, out of respect for Alderman Patterson, if he wants to do a little more homework on it, I mean, can't hurt for another 30 days. We can bring this back up again at our next committee meeting.
Well, I mean, y'all can pass it without my, we can always discuss it more. I'm just
And table it?
saying right
Okay.
now that I just want to do some more research. You move it forward.
All right, let's
I
move
guess
it.
we could always table it if we don't want to vote on at the council meeting.
Yeah.
Let's move it forward favorably for now.
Okay.
Mr. Alderman Patterson's going to review it.
All
But
right.
Ron, I think it's a great idea and a great concept.
And you're also.
And Mark, thank you for
as
your time.
As I said, if we say, well, 30 feet it doesn't work in situations where someone might have a pool back here or something, then maybe it's 25, maybe it's 20, as long as it's not on the street. And of course, that can always be amended in further public hearings before it's finally resolved.
I'm fine with that.
Great,
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
real quick before we close this out, you kind of bring up an interesting point. If someone, I mean, I guess there's different ways we can look at this, but if somebody brought it in, if they had a pool and they wanted to bring it in off their property line, whatever, 10 or 15 feet, if they've got, obviously I'm not speaking to someone that has a 90 by 150 lot, but because I think Regan mentioned
120 is the standard.
So, but like Regan mentioned earlier, that some people have larger lots. And maybe it's something maybe you could consider to where if you have the ability to plant vegetation, we would, to create another barrier.
If you, the only insurance requirement for a fence around a pool is 3 or 4 feet. It's not, you don't have to have a high fence.
I don't
The
know.
attract nuisance requirement is for this type of fence. But you could do this type of fence with bamboo or something like that and create a wall if you wanted more privacy to the pool and still meet the intent of this without
Right.
putting,
An 8-foot
a
fence
wall.
up. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
But the pool's an interesting point because if we allowed the pool to go in, which they have the right, and then they have to have a fence around that pool,
But they only have to have this fence.
right, but it may not be within 30, it may be 15. So,
Well, that's okay.
Would have to
Because
accommodate regardless.
They could put a pool right here,
exactly.
right now, with the 4-foot fence around.
Right.
So that works. And I think the other thing, Pat, maybe to look at is in a 90-foot lot, if you've got 20-foot setbacks, you've got a potential of a 50-foot by, if it's 120 feet and there's 25, you got like a 50 by, you could do a 3,500 square foot house on one floor. I mean, the
That's a big
setbacks
lot,
allow
yeah.
a big house right now, so.
Yeah.
Right.
No,
Right.
nothing.
I also just wanted to point out that the 30 feet, the other place that came from is that is the front yard setback on houses. So you can't build closer to the street than 30 feet. So a 30-foot fence is not going to come in front of the house no matter what.
Right.
Correct.
No, I'm aware of that, yeah.
All right, any other further discussion on 1? And Leanne, we're moving that forward favorably. Number 2, discussion of the Historic Commission recommendations relative to the establishment of certificate of appropriateness for application fee. Mayor Curtis.
This is a fee that we would like to charge at the Historic Committee. It's more of an administrative fee, which really I think council says that that's all we really can do correctly. I mean, it's not a money grab, so it's not a tax. It's just strictly for us to have to look at all this stuff and then have meetings and all that. There's a cost involved in putting that on, so there's a fee that we would like to charge to help recover some of the cost that incurs.
Have you guys done a cost analysis of what it's costing you now? The time, man hours, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm not ready to say at this point, no, but there is, we were talking about, what would we, there's been several different,
Ron, any comment?
yeah, you need
Grab
this?
that one, Ron, right here. Ron, this table.
The way that it actually would work is much like the other fees are set up right now. It would be passed as a fee that would be set by the mayor, and he would have to post what the fee is, and we would have to have a calculatable measure of how that fee came about. on file if anyone asks to see it. So most of our fees have now been changed to be that way, that they can be changed by the mayor and set by him.
All right, that's what I'm asking. So if we haven't done a cost analysis, I don't support moving it forward until we've done a cost analysis to present to the citizens.
Well, we wouldn't be setting a price.
This is just to say that there should be a fee
You have to
charged for
create,
this.
you have to create the ability to charge a fee, and in that creation of that ordinance, you have to then say how that fee's gonna be set, whether it's by ordinance, resolution, or by the mayor. And our fees are set by the mayor. And then before any fees could be charged, we would have to do the cost analysis, create the amount that it would be, post that publicly on the website, and have the cost analysis available if anyone wanted to see it.
Any comment by the other alderman?
I have a comment. Ron, do you have any idea how many of these you do in a year?
I would say that we probably average sometimes between 5 and 9 to 10 submissions per month
Oh, per month.
now.
Wow.
And it's more, and some of it's signs and fences and things like that, but a lot of it are homes, and they take a little more time. But that involves making sure the applications are complete, that they get uploaded, that they come to the meeting, that they have discussions with us, et cetera. So, and in comparison, and one of the things we recommended at one point, because we've been supporting the idea of recovering some of the town's costs in this, is look at our other communities. Look at
Yeah.
Covington, Hammond, Madison, Amanda. They all charge huge. I had a sign done on my building in Covington, $90 fee for the application for the permit. It's not I'm sorry, for the hearing to approve it, not for a building permit. Building permits are a different thing. So we're free right now. So I think we should at least be similar to our peer towns.
All right.
Well, and I think we should at least recoup the time that it takes for you to, administer it. There is a cost involved, and because those employees are not doing something else that they could be doing that
Well-
would make money for the town during that time.
As Mayor Curtis says, it's not a money grab, and I think we need to recoup our cost, but not beyond that. And that's why I was asking for a cost analysis, just to be, we'll get that in the future. 'Cause
Have that in, yeah, by the time it's ready to go, we would have all that ready where you can see exactly the breakdown of how many hours it takes, how much per hour.
And this is basically the cost of doing business. This is not something that the citizens will be burdened by. It's just those that are having to go through the process to work with us.
If we had to guesstimate, we would probably assume that it would be somewhere around $50, maybe $20 to $50 perhaps, unless we do the cost analysis and find that it's taking us many more hours to administrate these and prepare them for the meetings. We also have to consider the time and the cost that it takes to enforce the certificate of appropriateness. It's been an issue. We are getting it under control, but it takes sometimes the marshal going out twice, finally issuing citations, them having to come to mayor's court. And in the meantime, we're dealing with them every step of the way to bring them into compliance, because the idea is not to fine or punish, but to make sure that they're following the same rules as everyone else.
Sure.
Well, but is this a following the ordinance or guidelines issue, or is this, the way I'm understanding here is this is if I'm coming and I want to get in front of the Historic Commission, I'm going to file an application. And so, and I guess this is a draft year that was put together by Kristen. And I guess these are some figures that are being kicked around. $25 charge for application for installing a fence, sign, or paint your house.
Correct.
And then 50 for, I'm doing this, and everybody's happy with it, but then, and we've seen this before in the past, to where someone is not doing what they said they were going to do, whether it was with the historic or whether it was, the planning and zoning. So to me, that's a separate, whole other issue, because, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you haven't done what you said you're going to do. So it's not so much compliance, it's just doing what you said you're going to do. So But this, I mean, I see where, you know, it's an apple and an orange, where this somebody, if they want to come paint their house, and we went through paint color a few years ago and all that issue.
And it's working well. We're getting submissions, and it's.
Well, when you got
Right,
several
right.
thousand to choose from, you should be able to please most
Yeah.
everybody. But just so this is a consideration, say for example here, that if someone wants to come in and paint their house, they come and see the Historic Commission, and they pay a $25 application fee and say, here's my color, and you guys say, great.
They can make an online submission. They don't have to come to the meeting. They don't have to spend their time, and we just review them and say yes. A lot of times we do it in between meetings, but there's a lot of hand-holding, and Kristen spends a lot of very careful.
Yeah, it's the time that's
hands-on
spent
time.
before the
This is
historic
this is
meeting
the
that
process.
costs time. Like they walking people through the application process, actually accepting the paperwork, going through it, making sure they have everything that they need, calling to let them know that they don't have everything that they need. Sometimes she even goes out and actually takes the pictures to put with the packet
that's a-
themselves.
It's not
So-
just take my application and put it online.
Right.
It's a-
I'm going through the process right now, believe me, it's a lot of time that Kristen has to devote to
She's
this.
great at it. She's doing a great job. She's really careful with the rest.
This is just food for thought. I know at St. Tammany Parish, when you apply for a permit, there's a administrative fee, just like you might have an administrative fee here. But you're kind of getting into code enforcement. If you're having to chase somebody about something that they did without a permit that doesn't meet ordinance, normally it's an after-the-fact fee, and they charge double fees.
Well, yeah,
So
that's why I
I'm
say
not
this is an
saying
apple
that
and an
we want
orange,
to-
that we're chasing somebody down for
Well, there's still
either
an
not filing for an
administrative
application
cost,
at all,
whether-
or not doing what they said they were going to do.
Yeah, but whether or not they came to you and said they were gonna do this, or they did it and you have to go chase them down, you're still spending staff time
I don't
getting all that
disagree.
documentation.
No, I don't-
Most
I-
often,
I don't-
it's someone who hasn't made an application at all, who's just gone forward and
Right.
done the work. And then what happens is Kristen's time has to be spent trying to figure out how to bring it into compliance and working with the historic board to get approval on what could be done to bring it into compliance.
Well, if they would have come forward initially and presented to historic, we wouldn't
Right.
have the problem, so.
Right. So
Well-
it's a combination, and the
Again,
fine actually
an
for
apple
not,
and orange.
the fine for not doing a certificate of appropriateness is $540.
Right, which, again, it's, in my opinion, it's completely separate what we're talking about here. We're trying to say, look, if you want to come file an application, whether we follow this kind of breakdown here or we just charge a flat fee, regardless.
If you're gonna change you're gonna build a fence and all that, you need to come in.
Yeah.
Here's your application fee to build the fence.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
and I understand because, I mean, I was on historic, and so I know what was done for preparation and how many times we had to, say, come back next month, or come back next week, we'll approve it.
That's
but-
happening a lot less,
Yeah.
and we've just gone through a process of revising all the forms, not changing any requirements, just taking stuff off the forms, made no sense at all.
Yeah.
So that it's much more user-friendly, and we only get what we really need, and Kristen's rewritten all of those very well.
No, and I don't disagree with having some sort of fair application fee, because it makes people hopefully respect, you know, the people that are involved, respect their time, that, you know, if we ask for
The
A,
biggest
B, and
issue we have
C,
right now-
please provide it.
The biggest issue we have right now is enforcement. There must be 7 or 8 fences, all sorts of stuff all over town. Canopies, people are putting stuff all over the place without realizing they're in historic. And I know we're trying to figure out a way to communicate. If you live in the, when we finally get our zoning map, to really get that out and on the web, so people know, oh, I need approval for that, because everybody's coming in and saying, I didn't know. So,
Right.
Heard that.
This is just what it is. Let's not worry about it.
Right.
Enforcement now is a whole different. This is just
I agree.
application.
Yeah.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I'd like to go ahead and move this forward favorably, please.
I'll second.
No, it's our committee. I'll second.
Yeah,
We have a second.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Totally, yeah.
And that said, I'd like to make a motion to close governmental,
I'll second that as well.
moving into infrastructure.
I'd like to make a motion to open infrastructure.
Second.
All righty. I'd like to ask for the acceptance of the minutes.
Second.
Seeing that the minutes are accepted, I've got fun things to talk about. We're going to be building some additional sidewalks. It is part of the Nature Trails Phase 2. Yes, ma'am. I'm not going to make you upset. So Nature Trails Phase 2, which is a Federal Highway Administration grant. They work very quickly. This has only been in the works for 4 years. So what it's going to do is add some additional walkways into the town. We have a match that we will be responsible for. The total cost of the proposed walkways is $87,752. That's what we'll be paying. That they're giving us 87, and we have to match 20. We have to come up with 20%. But it gives us a whole new set of walkways into town, which goes to what we were just talking about, or Ron was talking about accessibility to the town and the look and the walkability of the town to be able to get from recreational parks, school, church, shopping, back to your home. If you see up here with the yellow, those are going to be the proposed extensions of walkways for the town. They will be concrete with ADA compliant ramps and stops, and
They're going to be 4 feet wide?
4 feet wide.
How wide are the ones on Main Street? Because I
Probably
feel like
36.
whatever that is, we need to go wider. I can't tell you how many times
Yeah, I know.
my
Yeah,
little kid fell in the ditch on his way to school.
Yeah, they're 36 inches. These are going to be 4 feet.
Okay, good.
That might be 42.
And there's a timeline on this. Let's see here. So just so you know, it's not going to happen overnight. Planning, they're allotting 148 days. Bidding and contracting is 120 days, and then construction 90 days. So as soon as that contract is signed and agreed upon, then they'll start the planning phases. And as you can see here, they now have we have some conceptual drawings of how it's going to be. They're going to be the walkways will be 4 inches thick. As they cross driveways, they'll be at a depth of 6 inches, so they handle more weight of the cars when they back across and come into the driveway. So that should hopefully help us out. It'll allow 2 bicycles or 2 people to be able to pass each other safely on the streets. On the highways next to the streets. Mayor, do you have anything to add into this?
No, you did a great job, Pat. That's what pretty much covers it all.
Okay, so this is something great that we've been looking for. We've been working on this since I was on the council the first time, and so that's 12 years ago. So it's nice to see that we're finally getting some final action on these walkways that we've been working on. Any questions, any comments from the council?
I have a question. In some instances, there's a sidewalk with a ditch between the sidewalk and the road. Are any of the places that you're placing them now? I see in the cross-section, it shows just a 2-foot section of grass there. But are there places where you have a sidewalk and a steep ditch in the proposed areas where you're
We have to
placing
wait
new ones?
for the final planning. These are all conceptual cross-sections. What they will do is they will come in, the engineers, and they'll go ahead and map it out along with personnel from the town of Abita Springs. and then that will be discussed and agreed upon, and then they'll go ahead with the planning. So we'll have some chance to look at it before
So-
actual construction.
Okay, so if there is a case like that, we might even consider potentially subsurface drainage if there's a big ditch right there that can't, I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there just from a safety
We'll just have to look
standpoint.
at it, because there are some deep ditches, and we
Yeah.
may, if it's a,
That's exactly what we did down at the end of level, right before you go straight,
Yeah.
in front of the elementary school, was for that same reason. It was
Yeah.
a big, wide, deep ditch, so we subsurface drained and covered it in with grass and
Yeah, I would,
boulders, that type of
I
stuff.
think that's a great idea, because it really is a safety concern when you're riding a bike and you fall
Right.
in a 4-foot hole.
you definitely don't want to face plant in a ditch.
Right, or if people have landscaping in the very front of their lot, which a
Right.
lot of people do in Abita, you really don't have the full use of that sidewalk,
No.
because things overhanging. So, it would be nice to kind of look at that for a safety
The
situation.
other thing that I would like to point out, which I'm very pleased with, is that the contractor that was awarded the bid is Subterranean Construction LLC, and they're located right off of 59 in Mandeville. So
Great.
It's a local contractor.
So ballpark, we think 6 months we'll have sidewalks?
6 months or, yeah.
6 months, give or take a month,
Month
if we
or
get
two.
into the monsoon season again.
Yeah.
All right, next,
90 days, close out.
we have
Construction close out 90 days.
the lift station rehabilitation project, which, I'm sorry? Yes. Subterranean construction is for the lift station rehabilitation. It's going to be a three-phase in-ground lift station. It's $1.192 million project. This includes the pumps, the fencing, the pads for the lift station itself, and graveling and everything else that is necessary to put around the lift station. That bid
That's it right
has been accepted, and we will be starting on that fairly quickly. They were the lowest bid, the subterranean construction. They were the lowest bid, so they will be doing this project for us. And Lord knows we need this done.
So it says contract is 210 days, so that's from the time they start, that's how much time they'll have?
Yes. All righty, that is, does anybody have anything to say about any of this? All right, well then, I will move to close infrastructure.
Second. All right, and I guess for our last economic development, Pat, would you mind sitting in for Yvette, please?
I move to open, as soon as I can get to it, the economic development
I'll
committee.
second that.
Okay, I've got to get back to my,
I don't think there was anything on the
I
agenda.
don't think there was anything. I move for acceptance of the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, the minutes have been accepted. Was there anything on there?
Yep.
Seeing that we have no things to discuss, I will move for closure of the Economic Development Committee.
I'll second that.
All righty. Economic is closed.
Okay, well, thank you. Yep, if there's no other questions, comments from the board or anybody, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
So moved.
All right, thank you all very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Mike's off?